Undertale is a work of plagiarism. Wild Blue Skies is a work of plagiarism. Anton Blast is a work of plagiarism. Pizza Tower is a work of plagiarism. You know, there are so many examples of indie games over the past couple of years trying to pass themselves off as cool, original, exciting new games, when in actuality, they're basically just plagiarized from some 90s Nintendo game or a cult classic that was on Nintendo consoles. Okay? Undertale plagiarized everything from Live Alive and Earthbound. Okay? Wild Blue Skies plagiarized from Star Fox. Okay? You have Pizza Tower plagiarized everything from Wario Land. Okay? Like, we have like dozens and dozens and dozens of examples of this over the years, but a pattern has started cropping up, and we're starting to see people like actually start noticing the pattern. Is that one of these plagiarized games comes out, like say Pow World, and the entire industry rallies behind it. You have people saying it's the biggest hit ever, that it's this cultural phenomenon, that it's this huge deal, that it's going to kill the Nintendo IP, right? That it's bigger and better than anything Nintendo's ever done. And then immediately it comes out and it completely falls off like a wet fart, okay? Pow World has lost like 3/4 of its player base over the past couple, since 1.0 came out, okay? Like, the TCG never went anywhere. Nobody's buying the merch. Nobody's getting excited at their presence at the Tokyo Game Show, okay? And the lawsuit is still ongoing, okay? You know, another example, Genshin Impact, right? 10 years ago, Genshin Impact was released, blatantly plagiarized mechanics, the art style, and the world of Breath of the Wild, right? And the industry tried pushing this idea that it was some cool, new, innovative thing that was actually way more popular and way more successful than Breath of the Wild. And it's only been recently that people have taken a step back, thought about it, and realized that, like, wait a minute, I don't know anybody who plays Genshin Impact. I don't see anyone talking about the characters or playing the game. Like, I don't know anything about it. And when you really look, peel layers behind the curtains, when you really look at, like, who's actually pushing Genshin Impact, it is sponsored cosplayers and streamers. That's it. Like, there is no organic player base for Genshin Impact. It is an AstroTurf thing that is trying to meme itself into relevancy. And it never really took off, which is why Ho-Ho-Verse, like, tried branching out into, like, other projects, pushing other things, like Honkai Star Rail and stuff like that. Like, they tried doing the same exact thing, but with other brands. But, like, the simple fact of the matter is, Genshin Impact had no real long-term appeal. Pow World had no real long-term appeal. Silksong had no real long-term appeal. We were told that Silksong was supposed to be, like, bigger and better than any Metroid game. And the simple reality of it is that people forgot all about it within a couple of months. Like, Silksong was more popular before it came out than what it was when it had actually released, which I think says everything you need to know about where we're at in the current space, where the current gaming industry is so incompetent, they're so devoid of talent, they're so devoid of original ideas, they are completely incapable of producing cool, new, interesting games, and instead are completely reliant on ripping off everything Nintendo does. And this has been true for like 20 years. This isn't really like a new phenomenon. We saw like a lot of Zelda knockoffs back in the day, a lot of Mario 64 knockoffs, a lot of Metroid knockoffs over the years. But like, you know, and now we're seeing a lot of Pokemon knockoffs. Like, but we're told over and over and over and over again that this is bigger and better than everything Nintendo's doing, that this is way more exciting, that this is more mature, that this has way more content, that it's better value for your dollar. And the simple reality is that it is not and never will be true. Again, Nintendo has so many resources, so much talent, that they can produce several games in the same time frame, in the same franchise, than any indie game or third-party studio can. So when you look at something like Metroid, the narrative has always been that Nintendo doesn't put out enough Metroid, that Hollow Knight is way better, that Team Cherry is the new king of the genre, right? That was the narrative. But then, like, you know, when you actually look at the release schedule, when you see that, like, you know, Federation Force 2016, Samus Returns 2017, Dread 2021, Prime 4, you know, 2025. Like, what you end up seeing is that you get not only higher quality, more frequent releases from Nintendo, but you also get a lot more variety. Like, these are all Metroid games, but they're all radically different. They all innovate. They all do different takes on the genre, right? They all have, like, you know, they can experiment. They can do new things. Silksong, at its very core, is an expansion pack of the original Hollow Knight. And when you really peel back the layers of, like, the lore and what that game actually is, fundamentally, all it is just building up to a ripoff of Bloodborne's plot twist, right? That's all Silksong is that it has the same twist as Bloodborne. And a lot of people, like, don't really want to, like, acknowledge this. They don't want to talk about how Expedition 33 pales in comparison to, like, the Nintendo RPGs. It actually ripped off a lot of aspects from Xenoblade Chronicles 3 in particular. Like, they don't want to, like, address, like, the fact that Nintendo is dominating all these companies. They just want to continue pretending as if, like, their knockoff products have a chance in hell of beating out what Nintendo does. Like, Wild Blue Skies is a really good example of this, because we went into this being told that, like, oh yeah, this is being made by the original Star Fox team. Nintendo's not producing their own Star Fox. This is going to be the closest thing you get to the real thing. What happens? Nintendo announces a remake of Star Fox 64, and that just completely takes the wind out of their sails. It just completely demolished any credibility that this game had. Like, looking at those two games side by side, like, Star Fox is, like, 30 years old now. Well, it will be next year. 30 years old next year. It is an old game, and yet it still feels and plays far more sophisticated than this brand new indie game from some guy that nobody cares about, right? Like, the attempts at making the Star Fox knockoff product failed. And this is, like, coming in after all the nonsense in regards to, like, Star Fox not being supported and not being, like, getting regular releases. Like, the reality is something like Star Fox 64 has endured better than even the most high-profile indie games. Like, you're simply never going to see a situation in which an indie game eclipses a Nintendo property. And if it somehow does, you know, the way Minecraft does, you know, it's going to be quickly scooped up by another company and not be indie anymore. And the entire product is going to go to shit. You know, Grand Theft Auto and Minecraft technically sell more than Nintendo properties, but they're not as popular. They can't release new entries, and we're starting to see that, like, games like Super Mario are far more popular. The Mario movie easily outperformed the Minecraft one. And you would think Minecraft would be this huge cultural phenomenon, but the 350 million units sold figure doesn't really account for, you know, the culture and the price point, and, like, how Minecraft for a lot of people is, like, their first video game or whatever. Like, it's like, it doesn't really take into consideration all the facts that, like, something like Minecraft and GTA cannot possibly surpass Pokemon in relevancy. Okay? Cannot possibly surpass Mario in relevancy. It just isn't going to happen, right? They are essentially brands that took off because of cultural fads at the time and are currently on top, but will very quickly fall off with no real hope of recovery, as opposed to Nintendo, which is way more well-adjusted, way more capable of, like, producing cool, new, interesting ideas, and not relying on the same old tired concepts. And I do think this is why the gaming industry is completely fucked. Because not only are the major third-party developers not competitive, not only can they not compete, not only can they not put out products, not only is their, like, budget and their release schedule fucked, they also can't rely on the lower budget guys. Because the lower budget guys are always going to get mobbed by everything Nintendo's doing. Like, Nintendo puts out one high-quality game a month. And in spite of what people like Nintendine might tell you, these games are far more popular, far more successful, far more iconic than any of these games on Steam or other platforms. The simple fact of the matter is that Nintendo is positively dominating the space at this time, that Nintendo is winning the console war, that third parties are coping, they're seething, they're not able to compete. Like, what we're seeing is a complete and utter failure of the masses to keep the narrative regarding Nintendo negative. Like, what we're seeing now is that, like, everybody is, like, constantly just doing everything they possibly can to write off every single Nintendo game while glazing every single indie game. But when they do that, it just makes more people realize what the problem actually is. Because I remember when Genshin Impact came out, and the narrative at the time was that this was a better game than Breath of the Wild, that it was making more money than Breath of the Wild, that it was more popular than Breath of the Wild, and that Genshin Impact would take over the entire gaming industry. And that never happened. Okay? Like, that is the pattern that we've seen play out time and time again. You know, whether it's like Doom Eternal versus Animal Crossing New Horizons, or whether it's The Last of Us Part 2 versus everything else, or Elden Ring versus Tears of the Kingdom, or like Astrobot versus Nintendo 3D platformers, or, you know, Expedition 33 versus like JRPGs as a whole. You know, you see the entire industry rally behind these absolute nonsensical clone games that are nowhere near the level of quality as the games that they're ripping off from. And anybody who's remotely familiar with the genre or the history of gaming and have played all this stuff, they know that this stuff isn't up to snuff and it's just being shilled. And we're at the point now that we're seeing people finally start calling this out. Like, you are seeing people really start speaking up about how garbage Ho-Verse actually is. You know, how garbage Genshin Impact was. It took a decade to get here, and we had to go through, like, cycle after cycle of this stuff happening. But we are at the point where people are freely admitting that, yes, at its core, Genshin Impact was a ripoff of Breath of the Wild. And it's only a matter of time until the same thing happens to Pow World, and happens to Expedition 33, and happens to Astrobot, and happens to all these other knockoff products, okay? It's only a matter of time until that happens, because fundamentally, when Nintendo fans accuse something of plagiarism, it is always completely validated by the facts.